Hey guys, one of the misconceptions that happens right now when we set up HaloPSA is the requirement for Azure integration to exist both for the tenant and for single sign-on. It seems like the conception is that um, you need both. You need to have the Azure tenant configured in order for the single sign-on to work. And in reality, you don't actually need both. So I'm actually going to share my screen. I'm going to try to share my screen. Give me 1 second. Okay, here we go. I have here in front of me, I have a brand new Halo instance using a demo URL as brand new trial, just set up the other day. I also have a brand new 365 instance. This is instance using the Microsoft Development Partner Development Partner Program that will allow you to create 90-day instances. Essentially, it comes with demo data and stuff like that, so we can see a list of users that were created and licenses and stuff. So Microsoft offers these for 90 days at a time, and I'm using this in this case to showcase a brand new environment and what it would look like. So I did initially test it out to make sure it would work, and then I undid it to see how to set it up from scratch. So if we look at here, I only have the email connector currently configured. If we go to configuration here, I do have a mailbox set up to Azure 365. But if we look in our integrations and then go to Azure Active Directory, I do not have single sign-on configured, and I don't have a tenant here. So with this video specifically, I'm going to show you how you can have single sign-on configured, even though you don't have an Azure integration connected inside the Azure tenant. You do not need both. You can just get away with one or the other. The reason why this works primarily is because the single sign-on is not looking at the actual 365 user. It's not looking at the immutable ID of the user to verify that the user exists and is valid. It's strictly going by the email address and matching the email address of the 365 account to the user in Halo, the agent in Halo, agent or user in Halo, actually. And so we don't need to have the entities, the agent or user synchronized from Azure in order for the single sign-on to work. It just matches off the email address. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and walk you through setting it up. If you were to follow the article on Halo, the Halo has, it will take you through doing both. But in some cases, you may not want to do the Azure integration. You only just want the single sign-on. So this is how you do it. Inside of Microsoft Office 365, under the entra.microsoft.com, this is the previous Azure Active Directory admin page. This is now called Microsoft Entra or Entra ID or Identity. And so we would go to the identity page, we'd go to applications, and then we'd go to app registrations. And here we can see all the ones that we own, or we can see all of them in the entire organization. And right now, the only one that exists is the email connector. I'm going to go ahead and click new registration, and we're going to set this up. When we set up the name, it's important to know that the name is going to be publicly visible to whoever is using the single sign-on option. The first time they use it for their Microsoft 365 tenant, they're going to get prompted with a page that displays information about the application, such as the name over here. So in this case, I'm going to call it Rising Tide Support Portal, so that when the end user sees it, they know what it is. And then I'm going to do multi-tenanted here, Microsoft Entra ID multi-tenant. And then I'm going to select web as the redirect URI, and I have to put in the URL of where the login attempt is coming from. In this case, it's just right here. Generally, it'll be displayed on the page of what you need, but also because I'm doing a single sign-on, in this case, the single sign-on application, I also need to specify any URL that I could potentially come from. So if I were going to have a custom domain, it may be this domain name. If I were to have a custom portal domain, I may need that as well. So if I go to authentication tab after I create it, I need to add additional URLs for each one. So there's the URL for that domain. I'm just going to add in account Azure response. And then if I had a portal, oh, come on. Keyboard shortcuts are all over the place. If I had a portal here, I may do -portal or something, some other portal domain name that would need to be used. Anything that I could potentially be coming from in a login attempt, I need to specify here. I have to specify the access tokens and ID tokens for single sign-on, and then I already have this set to be multi-tenanted. I'm going to go ahead and save that. The branding and properties you may want to fill out additionally. Aside from just the name being filled in, you may want to provide a logo, which you can upload here, the homepage URL for your website, terms and services, privacy statement, so on and so forth. And then, of course, if your publisher domain is a non-Microsoft domain, so I can do risingtide.com, risingtidegroup.net, or something like that, something that I have a domain of, mendy.tech, mendyonline.com. And then if it was a custom domain, I would be able to add MPN ID, Microsoft Partner Network ID, if I was a Microsoft partner. I actually am. So I do have an ID I couldn't specify, but I can't do this because it's on the onmicrosoft.com domain, and I cannot verify an application on that domain. When you do enter an MPN ID, you can get one of two errors. One error will say that the MPN ID doesn't exist or was not found. If you get that error message, that means that you're using the wrong MPN ID. Microsoft gives you multiple partner network IDs, one for each location, plus a global one for your entire organization. You should be using, I think, the global one. And if one doesn't work, you can just try the other. The other potential error message you can get will be a more generic error where it just fails to apply the MPN ID, but the MPN ID isn't mentioned as not found. In that situation, it's because the application that you created is too new. And you should give it about an hour, 45 minutes or so before you come back and try again so that you can verify that application. Under API permissions, we need to provide the required permissions that's going to be needed in order for the application to work. We're going to remove the existing one. And we're just going to add in the OpenID, Microsoft Graph Delegated, offline access, and OpenID. Add permissions. There may be a couple others that are needed. I'm going to grant admin consent, even though it's not technically required. And that should basically be all that you need in order to set up your single sign-on application inside of Azure. So we're going to go to the Overview tab, and we're going to grab the application ID. We're going to flip over to our configuration here on this main screen. We're going to flip this to multi-tenanted, and we're going to set the Azure tenant ID. Well, application ID first, right? That's what I copied. And then we're going to copy the tenant ID and paste it in here. And so we got our tenant ID, our application ID, and now for an allowed tenants, I need to paste that in here. So this is tenant now becomes allowed to be used for single sign-on. I'm going to select the Microsoft Graph Global Service as the one I'm using, and I'm going to mark that as published. These now have become read-only fields. This one isn't, but it used to be. These two are, and this is not, because you can continue to add additional tenant IDs into the allowed tenants. So everyone that you want to allow or enable single sign-on for, you have to list in here as well. Finally, you can choose who's allowed to use single sign-on, agents or users or both. And then you can tell it to automatically create users if it's unmatched, if it's someone uses Azure AD login, but they're not present in Halo. And then also you can tell it to automatically redirect agents and users directly to the Azure login without showing the Halo login screen. We're going to leave both of those unchecked for right now. Let's test this out. So I do have I'm not going to try to log out and log in because I don't want to lose potentially the ability to log back in if it didn't work. I'm going to instead flip over to the end user portal, which should give me a login screen as well. And here I can see the sign in with 365. I'm going to tap that button. I'm going to sign in with my existing account. And notice that this does not match the redirect URL URI. So this actually didn't work. There's a missing URL here. So we're going to copy this URL that's missing. And it's important to read the error message here, right? Because Microsoft is telling you what's going on. This redirect URI is not specified in the application with this application ID. So if we go look at that application ID, and sure enough, we don't have the Azure response yeah, we're missing the auth account Azure response. So we're going to add that for all these too. Let me grab this. Let me grab this part and save. And let's go and try this again. We're just going to refresh. Well, we're going to back up to the portal. Sign in with 365 again. Sign in. What's interesting is that it's, did I save it? I did save it. Let's just make sure I'm looking at the right application. I think this is the right application. 18714C4 FC. Yep. That is correct. We've got account Azure response for these two. This is not required. I'm going to delete the ones that are not required in this case. We have this one, we've got this one, we've got this one, and that one. Let's close the tab and reopen, because I think that should have worked. It may just take some time for it to listen because it failed the first time. Let's try something real quick. Let's just go here and see what happens. Yeah, so we just have to add in the URI, which we did. It's probably just cached. I just don't want to lose my Halo. Let's try something. Let's unpublish. Let's close this out. Let's switch to end user portal again. All right, so we've lost the 365 login. Let's clear, well, I don't want to clear the cookies because it's the same URL as, it's the same domain, same site as this one. Let's set up a new app with the correct URL in here the first time and see what happens. Refresh, let's do new registration. Again, we'll do this again, Rising Tide support portal, V2 in this case. Again, we'll do multi-tenanting, do web, and we'll paste in, that's not any of the ones that we want to use. Let's grab it from here for right now. We'll paste this in and let's go ahead and register. And then we'll go back to app registrations. We'll go to Rising Tide support portal. We'll go to authentication. We'll grab this domain, auth account Azure response. Let's go back here, refresh, go to V2, authentication. Let's add, we're going to add this and replace that and add one more. And this time we'll replace that. And so we have 4 URLs here for the ones that should be needed. We'll select these 2, click save. And then we'll go to API permissions, which is what we need. And then we'll add the permissions that are required here. Microsoft Graph, delegated, offline, OpenID, add. Let's go to our overview. Let's grab our application ID. We'll replace it here. And let's grab our tenant ID. Tenant ID is not changing, so we don't need to worry about that. But this should now give us a different application ID. If we get the same error, we know something else is going on. So let's publish it. And let's go ahead and refresh the page. Now we have sign with 365. Let's click a button, select sign in. And here we go. This is what should happen. So we're getting prompted now to say, hey, do we want to trust this application, right? So I'm guessing that because it had already tried to access it, so it hadn't refreshed the change that I had made with additional URIs, recreating the app with a version 2 looks like it worked. It's showing unverified, but that would change if you add your MPN ID. I'm going to consent on behalf of the organization, which is going to grant it admin access, and I'm going to accept. Once that's done, it redirects me back to Halo, matches my email address to my user, and I'm now logged in as Mendy. And we can see that here if we go to our API permissions. There may be a couple other permissions that were granted, email, profile. So we can just come here and add to configured permissions just because. And now that application has access to these four permissions, 3 of which have been granted consent. And that's basically it. I mean, other than that small little problem with this app, the second app works fine. It's just the change in URIs didn't take effect because we already tried using the application, so it was cached. In this case, now if I log out of the main Halo, so I'm going to close out the portal, I'll log out of the main Halo, and then we'll go back to it once it redirects me. I should be able to. Well, it didn't actually log me out of 365. It literally just took me right back in. So if I come here and I just clear my cookies, let's just do it that way. We'll clear the HaloPSA right here, the domain cookies, and then refresh. It should take me to the login screen. So now I can show off if I hit the sign in of 365, click my account. It wants my password. Hold on. I don't know where my password is. So this is going to be fun. Bum, 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 bum. This was not supposed to happen. I think the password is lost because I didn't save it on purpose. It was meant to be a temporary throwaway password. So I don't know if I have the password for this. Let's see. If we have wait, I might have it. That wasn't it. This one? No, I'm gonna get locked out. It's gotta be this one. Ta-da! All right, found it. Okay, so I put in my password and I am now redirected back into Halo. So very easy, super simple setup with the SSO. I don't have anything other than the SSO configured in the Azure integration. Wrong button, try that again. And so we can see like we've got the app set up here and we don't have any tenants here. Okay. The only other thing I'll show you about the single sign-on and mostly about the login page is that you can come into integrations page, go to the API, and look at your applications. You can see that these applications, these 2 applications, directly correlate to number 1, the user portal, and then number 2, the main agent portal. And so you can go into them and modify how the login appears. So I can change this to like a button. I can override this to be like enter login and save. And now if I go back and let's just delete my cookies again, remove, done, refresh. I will now have 2 buttons, right? And I've renamed it from 365 to Entra. But if I go to the user portal, for example, come here, switch to end user portal, my login page will still be a, let's see if I can log out of here. Sign up 365 with a form. I can come in here and do the same exact thing. I come in here, go to the user portal, edit that, change this to do show button. You know, I can do Azure SSO to show button, and I can say, and save. And then if I come back here and reload, I now have the same 2 buttons. I can also rename the Halo credentials to say direct support login, so to speak, or some other terminology that makes sense because your clients may not know what Halo is. So you can rename that to be like Rising Tide portal login, and then we can say with work email or something like that, right? And then we can come up here and rename those and customize how that looks. That's basically it. That's all I got for you. Hopefully this was interesting and helpful. Let me know in the comments below. We'll do another video on the actual Azure integration with the tenant setup and role mapping, and another video later on about the email and stuff. I tried doing a video with all of it. It went out to be like an hour long, and that was just way too long. Anyways, thanks for watching, and yeah, let me know what you think.